bill and his policies, that is President William Ruto's administration and his policies. So what will the turnout of the day be like? We just want to get that particular report from our reporter and how also you're going to plan your day as well.
With few hours left to Friday's Saba Saba rally, the opposition has given the green light to the event to be held at the Kamukunji grounds. Speaking after an inspection of the grounds, several opposition MPs called on their supporters to troop to Kamukunji for the anti-President William Ruto rally, set to be attended by opposition leaders Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, Martha Karua, among others.
It will be a very peaceful rally tomorrow. By 9 we should be here. This will be a day that we begin a new beginning in our political operations.
Hiyo sovereignty na uchaguzi tuliwapatia, we are now withdrawing it, and we are the people. Unasikia vizuri? Yes. We are the people.
According to the leaders, similar rallies will be held across the country. This as they hinted that the Kamukunji rally will culminate in a march to the Nairobi Central Business District.
Kesho, the only traffic we need is the traffic of the people. Yeah. We don't need watu wa magari, wekeni magari nyumbani, utoke huko nyumbani, fuel iko juu. Kesho kujeni mfike hapa Kamukunji.
Na tukishamaliza rally ya kesho, tutakuwa na maandamano ya amani kuelekea sehemu ya town, ili kuanza kuona watu ambao wataungana na sisi.
This comes on a day when several civil society groups announced that they will join the opposition's rallies to protest against the high cost of living and the government of the day.
The problem is not economy. The problem is not COVID. The problem is not multi-party. The problem is one William Ruto. Raila Odinga has been wrong on many things, but he's right about this one. If the common enemy is one William Ruto, then why are you fighting what is not the problem?
Tomorrow, all eyes will be at Kamukunji to see what next for the opposition in its anti-government plans, as well as across the country to see which other parts will take part in the Saba Saba rally. 12 hours before Saba Saba Friday, this is the situation at Kamukunji grounds, where just a handful of people are congregating. But come tomorrow, Azimio leaders are confident that these very grounds will be full to the brim as they urge supporters and Kenyans at large to join in their cause. David Muthoka, KTN News at Kamukunji grounds in Shauri Moyo, Nairobi.
Right, that was David Muthoka there, and of course telling us about today. He was reporting the story of yesterday that we are running. Looking at the editorial cartoon today, Raila is at it and is the trumpet. You can see the melodies there, but if you look keenly also on those musical notes as well, you'll see Saba Saba, and he's having a clarion call, taking advantage of today, which is touted to be a defining day and moment in the country as far as multi-party democracy is concerned, and maybe agitation also as far as consolidation and democracy of, or consolidation of democracy and deepening of it here in the country is concerned. Let's just get into the nitty-gritty of it first of all. After a long hiatus, so to speak, today is a day. Saba Saba is a day. We can see other headlines like the Daily Nation saying politics of betrayal. I don't know what you may remember, Martin Oloa, when it comes to Saba Saba, and why today Azimio has taken the advantage of running with the Saba Saba day for the resumption of the protests.
There are many things to think about Saba Saba. There's Martin Shiguku, there is Charles Rubia, there is really the birth of the revolution leading towards now the removal of Section 2A and eventually issues to do with multi-party democracy and so on. So Saba Saba generally is a very important political debt in terms of Kenya. I remember Orengo and Martin Shikuku on a pickup Running around town, those were not the days that we have so much freedom as we have now. But the risk of running around town in an open pickup, challenging Moi, was not an easy thing. So the history of this country, the fights for space, political spaces, is best demonstrated around issues of Saba Saba, and of course the characters of Ford Kenya, then Ford Silly, then whatever Fords arrived after that. The key issue that I want to raise here is that much as there is hype around Saba Saba and there's a history around it, one of the things that I don't see gaining traction for Azimio is the same spirit, because the characters that straddled this country at that time, their political commitment and their political ideology, those characters are no longer here, partly because they are dead, partly because things have changed. Somebody like Orengo is very busy running around an executive in CI and so on. But the street demonstrations, the fights around the demonstration is something that historically we are seeing a different shift around it, a different ideology and a different commitment around it. As for what it turns out in terms of significance, it makes sense to a few of our, we can call them traditional politicians. Does it make a lot of sense to our new political dispensation? Perhaps not, because one of the things that we are saying, even as we grow, we are not teaching our children and teaching our students the history of struggle, the history of independence as we know it, the issues of human rights and why people should fight for them, is increasingly becoming an alien thing. You're not seeing people who can come and they're furious about rights and furious about issues of independence and so on. Something that we need to work on. Overall, when you look at the business of opposition, of course they have to oppose. They have to give alternative views. They have to stand up to government. They have to check government, and there's nothing wrong with that. The key issue for me is that what is your message? What is your medium of communication? And how context specific are you? And the problem, the reason why Azimio is not getting traction with the rest of the Kenyans is the context. These guys who are in government today came and took a context of hustlers and ran a narrative about the dynasties, and somehow they took people with them. Now, what is the other narrative? What's the opposite narrative now that they are in power? And for sure, you can see that they are no longer about hustlers, and they are no longer about, they're no longer about what they promised. So even Azimio needs now to craft a narrative that can actually resonate with the tough times and the conditions that currently exist.
Thank you. Kipruto Rapkiro.
Yeah, and the Saba Saba in Kenya is slightly younger than the original Saba Saba in Tanzania, which was 7th of July in 1967. In Arusha, that was the rebirth of the Tanzanian nation, where the nation, through the rallying call, Kujitegemea, was trying to galvanize the body politic and also the psyche of the nation to think of having themselves to rely on their own effort, their own resources, and their own strength. So in Kenya, it was reborrowed, and it became the rebirth of the nation through what we call second liberation, with a number of demonstrations, a number of rallies, a number of mounting of roadblocks. I remember this Limuru Road was no-go zone. As those of us who are members of parliament in the 90s, we had to go through Limuru, drive quietly all the way to parliament, because we could not take this Waiyaki way directly towards Limuru. And that, to me, was a serious struggle where people took themselves to the streets to demand the power that had been taken away through insertion of a section within the Constitution called Section 2A. So subsequent to that, we were able to amend the Constitution through the KANU delegates in Kasarani and President Moi pronouncing himself to the fact that while the majority of Kenyans still believed in KANU, he himself had to give way to some of the divergent views. And it allowed me, and today when I think about President Moi, I think he was a manager of transition of a kind. transition from Kenyatta that we all thought he was omnipresent and he was going to be here forever, to himself, who was as mortal as the rest of us, he was also able to transit from one party state that had been entrenched to a multi-party state, and also was able to transit from a sitting president to a former president through smooth transition, allowing the opposition of the day to take over power. That, to me, is what it means. It is a sign of struggle. And I think it is relevant today than ever before, because this is a struggle against a young regime that is likely to entrench itself and to become monolithic in thinking, in approach, and in structure. Because this is a regime that is only 10 months, and they seem to be overreaching themselves in all facets of leadership, including the structure of government of the day. At no time did I see 4 strangers in the cabinet. At no time in the past did I see some people who are not sworn in being members of the cabinet, people who are not provided for in the constitution being members of the cabinet, and the president being mooted to be an executive chair of a commission that is entrenched in the constitution. These are some of the tell signs that we must revisit the rebirth of a nation called Kenya and ensure that we do not allow anybody to think that they will be here forever. Even if William Ruto was to be here for 10 years as the President of the Republic of Kenya, he will not be here forever. One day, somehow, he himself will ease himself out of the way, or God will ease him if the people of Kenya will not ease him out of the way. And therefore, in the intervening period, we should not allow excess bad manners. We must improve our political hygiene as a people of Kenya. To me, this is what Saba Saba is, and I support it. And at times you don't see me in these rallies because I believe strongly in division of labor. I've done my bit, they will do their bit, and I will do my bit tomorrow in another forum. Yeah.
Oh, you've done a bit, so what bit are you doing tomorrow? Or this is under wraps? You don't
if
want
I get another forum like this, I'll do my bit.
He wants to do boardroom politics,
okay.
not podium politics.
We need to also look at the raft of issues that Azimio is really agitating for. First of all is the dropping of the CSS, and we know the court made a determination as far as the 50 positions are concerned was unconstitutional, but now they are seeking and there's a petition already that these positions should actually be enshrined in our law. And we have also the executive who is seeking to be an executive chair of a public service commission. How constitutional is this? And is this a creation of another way of countermanding the constitution, going through the Parliamentary Act to enforce these positions?
Dibal, one of the things that I'll keep on quoting, because we must hold the Kenya Kwanza administration to account, is the pledge in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. First of all, the observation that, the Uhuru administration did not faithfully implement the constitution. And so what does Kenya Kwanza say in their manifesto? That they'll ensure that they not only execute the letter of the constitution, but the spirit. Now, when you see, and you remember the debate around BBI and how proponents of the BBI were interested in positions and so on. Now, Kenya Kwanza comes to power and did not just, make a proposal for the creation of a position of prime cabinet, the appointed one. Is that not a position? Yes, it is. The same Kenya Kwanza, even before I leave the Prime Cabinet Secretary, now we have an office that looks like it is one of those public offices that we have to live with. The office of the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Now this is Kenya Kwanza that said they are not about position, they're about wananchi, putting money into the pockets of people. What did the president launch the other day? Serikali mkononi, sio pesa mfukoni. And when you talk of betrayal, I'm seeing one of the headlines is betrayal. The biggest betrayal is not among the political elite. It is the betrayal of the people. You remember in the fight for our independence of this country, Kenyans, particularly those that were living in the so-called White Islands, fought for freedom and land. What did the leadership give? They say, Hakuna Chabure. It is Uhuru na kazi. Now we are seeing a pledge by Kenya Kwanza of pesa mfukoni. Now it is serikali mkononi. That's what the president launched the other day. Those are acts of betrayal. And so when we see the presidency going out of its way to appoint 50, an odd 50, CAS positions that do not add any value. Let's look at it. Is there any work in government that today is not being done because 50 CSS have not been appointed? There's no work. And I like the court judgment, which did not just fault the process, but actually, put a rivet into the positions and said, went back and told us how, and we all remember how former assistant ministers like Kivuta Kibwana, Kalembe Dile used to complain that, this assistant minister position.
No,
they both complained. They were assistant ministers at some point. They both complained that, this assistant minister position has no work to be done. Now today, the president who said BPI was about positions wants to saddle our public service with 50 unnecessary positions. And look at all this, hogwash in the paper about a petition. And that's why we must not take it lightly. These charlatans who have petitioned Parliament are the same ones who are used to remove the IBC commissioners, the Cherera 4. And so these are people at the payroll of some mandarins in the state. And so we must not take lightly. But what I think we need to say is that I do not think this petition will go any far. I do not think we need to concentrate more power in the hands of the president. Of course, I saw the president the other day during the launch of eCitizen, enjoying being the reporter, enjoying being the MC and everything at the same time, in a function where he had all his cabinet ministers. In all fairness, we want the president to be healthy. We want the president to sleep enough. Let the president learn to delegate, so that he is not saddled with all manner of assignments, being the reporter and all manner of things in a function of the kind we saw last week.
Let's hear from Dr. Kalua. So if we have the president who is using the act of parliament to come up with all these positions as well, what does it really, as Churchill is putting it, what does it really show is the motive of this current administrations with all this blotted wage bill that we do have? Yet it has been the clarion call from the government that we want to pare down on the wage bill. We can see the civil servants as well. The salaries, how much figure are we talking about? 3.8 billion shillings that is bound to be ticking up if we have the salaries being reviewed by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission being approved.
I take it back from the Saba Saba, what you had asked earlier on.
You're still on Saba Saba, the issues that have been raising.
I see a great opportunity for our country, very great. The fact that we are able to demonstrate, picket, and raise issues in public in the way that we are, it means that we are a very grown constitution and a country. Democracy is at its best. There are a few things that will change and others that will give us an opportunity. First of all, we have a government in place. The President Ruto is still going to be the president until his term comes to an end. So that is not going to change. However much we try to do whatever we are doing, it only presents to him and the government an opportunity to listen very keenly to what the people are talking about. What is it that they want to raise? Are we listening to them? And this portends very, people are talking about the high cost of living. What are the opportunities that are available? That is going to change
the needs of the people and their livelihoods as it is, and those issues be implemented as it were. Our country right now, the biggest challenge that we have is the depreciating shilling. And depreciating to the dollar to up to 40% is not a very simple thing. What are the opportunities that we should be taking in place? I'm not an economist. I can only speak from my experience, having been a business person since the year 1991 as an entrepreneur, doing this every single day of my life. And one of the greatest things is to look at the market. What is the market in need of? What can we quickly export to change our economic situation? Because the more we bring in the dollars here, the better the economy becomes. Look at the global market for vegetables. Is $751 billion. 751 billion. How long does it take to produce vegetables?
3 months.
3 months? What must we do? We have biosecurity measures that must be taken in this country. We have farmers that are willing to do quite a lot of things. We have people who can produce and export. We have a ready market. Mushrooms alone, mushrooms, is a market of $50.1 billion. How long do mushrooms take? They can be done in the forest, they can be done in homes, procedures followed. It only takes 3 to 4 weeks. And there is a ready market globally that can take these mushrooms and we can sell and get US dollars here. How much is the market for honey, which takes just about 6 months? Bottomless market that you can never, it's about 8.5, 8.9 billion US dollars. If we can listen to the voice of what people are saying without being so technical, without being so thinking, because there is nothing that we are reinventing. These are the things that we now need to start thinking about. The futures that we are working on in terms of the economic strategy is not going to take us very far. At the end of the day, we still have to pay the US dollars that we are trying to save and extend to a later time. So we need to start. Listening is very, very important. And I think we need to encourage our president to also do the best that he's doing. We know he means very well. We know he's very vocal. We know he has all the energy that he has. And I think there is a space, just a small space, that needs to be there so that he can come back and say, nimeangalia vijana wangu vile wanaendelea na sioni wakiendelea vizuri. I am intervening because I am the big man. But if he sits at the front on all aspects, then there is a small challenge and people will misunderstand him anyway. The father is supposed to speak last after everyone has tried everything else. And I think that is something that I want to encourage from the bottom of my heart, that people are paining. People understand he means well. People elected him so that he can do the best that he can do for this country. But at the moment, vitu kwa ground ni tofauti kidogo. We need to step back and listen. And not just listen very carefully so that we can be able to respond to those specific issues. There are quick decisions that can be made in this country. They must not be extremely expert. It is what the market is asking for and us responding to the same and being genuine in advising. Those who are in power, those who are talking to the president, those who are advisors, please advise him in the best way possible. We are out here doing that. I hope this can get somewhere. I hope even the demonstrations of Saba Saba will be listened to and there can be something extremely good. The biggest opportunity that President Ruto has as part of this government is one that at such an early stage, he can hear what people are saying out there. And he has an opportunity to quickly correct and make himself a winner, just as we all win, because this country belongs to us. And may God grant him wisdom. And leadership is not easy. There are decisions that are forced because of political interest. And I have said earlier on here, we have done everything right in our country, save for politics. this is the time to start thinking, because we are in perennial campaigns in a way that we should not be, and the country is watching.
Thank you.
And we need to deal with this.
Indeed, indeed. So the caliber of advice that the president or the executive is getting, Martin,
Yes.
do you think is what should be coming from the AG? Because it seems every also fight that is put in court, he has to challenge it, even if it can be seen that the petition itself is threadbare of sailing through in terms of facts and the constitution.
You see, first of all, Dibal, you cannot take away by legislation that which has been made explicit by the Constitution.
By the Constitution, that's yes.
So Article 233 of the Constitution provides for a Public Service Commission, and it says what kind of composition the Public Service Commission ought to be. So the legislation can only be in tandem in fulfillment of the terms stated in the Constitution, not any other. The separation of powers, the difference between the Public Service Commission and any other powers of recruitment given to the president by the Constitution are like night and day. So the president cannot also be the chair of the Public Service, or the executive cannot chair the Public Service Commission. It is a constitutional commission meant to cushion civil servants away from the vagaries of politics, so that promotion and discipline of civil servants can be done independent of the executive. Similarly, the Teacher Service Commission, similarly, any other commission like the Police Service Commission, and of course, doctors have said they also want a public service, a medical commission or something, health service commission. And the point being made is that in order to safeguard gains that have been given by the Constitution, these commissions are meant to have some kind of semi-autonomy or semi-autonomy to be able to make decisions without looking back over their shoulders, without being commanded or without being told what to do by the president. So the president has every right to give the Public Service Commission its opportunity to do its job. He does not need to take it over. He does not need to preside over it. And that petition, no matter what comes out of it, the people that my friend Suba refers to as charlatans may have succeeded in IEBC, but they will have a hard time trying to succeed in the Public Service Commission in light of what the law says and what the Constitution says, and anything else that you want to do around it can only be in line with the Constitution, not against it. So I would say that the advice that the president is receiving, let me say this. I'm not sure that this president receives advice. I think he's the one who gives advice to others. He's totally in charge. I don't think he has room for people to advise him. He's somebody with a very strong opinion. He seems to have information about everything, and sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't work well. A leader at that level, whether you know or you don't know, whether you have an opinion or you don't have an opinion, hold it to yourself first. Take counsel from others and weave it into your decision so that you appear to have been listening. Even if you didn't listen, but appear to have been listening. Be there, sit there, listen. Even in his own good days, Arab Moi used to go around and say, he would take, and then he goes and fashions a decision. Even if it's totally against what people have said. But you need to appear as a leader to be listening. And that's the wisdom that our culture demands. That when you are the head of a household, you speak last, you listen to everybody. At least you give a semblance of a democracy, even though we know that yours is a monarchy. So you sit there, you listen, and sometimes you'll be persuaded by what people have told you and so on. So yes, there's room for advice, there's room, and I know that he has advisors. I mean, apart from Attorney General, he has the former Solicitor General, Ken Ogeto, in his office, and he has a number of lawyers around him.
David Lee and others, economic advisors.
But he has several lawyers on matters law that I believe he should be listening to, including the PS for Foreign Affairs, who was for a long time his legal advisor, and I know some of my former students who are also sitting in his office as advisors. So the point I'm making is that I don't think there is a vacuum in terms of the resources he has at his disposal on the law and the constitution. What then he wants to do is politics. And he has found every room to stretch this constitution at every turn of events. And that is going to be his undoing, because already you see the budget is being struck, is being hit on account of the constitution. The caste issue is being hit on account of the constitution. Eventually, even this thing about the cabinet secretaries and the role of some so-called strangers in the cabinet will come up, and he'll be reminded that the constitution sets a maximum of people who can sit in cabinet. How many do you have? And then he'll start justifying, and he'll be told, no, is this a full cabinet position or is it not? I mean, he creatively brought in this thing about a national security advisor at a cabinet level. Unfortunately, this is a presidential system that is not purely presidential as, say, the American system would be, which gives a lot of latitude to the presidency. Ours, these guys, Kinasumba Churchill, gave with one hand, took with another hand. They gave you a presidential system that was not purely presidential. It was mixed up with the parliamentary. And in some cases, some of those changes were being made without necessarily looking through the thread of it all. So he doesn't have that leeway to just make appointments the way he wants. The numbers are limited, and he has to live within those limits.
Kiro, I remember one time, I think just this year, you talked to us that you watch out, 3 months down the line, not even 7 years, we'll have the hallmarks of a dictator. And I don't know what you're reading through with this as well, because if you may ask, why would the president be having an interest on being the executive chair of the public service? The people will raise a question, is he a macro manager? Does he listen to advice? Does he just run this government like a maverick?
Well, to give him the benefit of doubt, I have a very strong feeling, because I worked with him for 2 years. I worked with him earlier when he was getting into politics. I'm his senior brother, and he used to come to me for advice when I was assistant minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, and we worked together, and up to the formation of UDM, a party that he brought in the other day. We formed it with him. He was elevated into a ministerial position. I was sacked as assistant minister, and that is our history. So knowing the person that I know, I'm sure he's not part of this scheme of trying to make him the chairman of Public Service Commission. Once I've said that, he's also gifted in testing. Being a scientist, I think he likes experiments. So at times he does very dangerous experiments like this one, and many other experiments like having a cabinet minister who is not a minister. These are some of the experiments that he has done, and my worry is not whether he will succeed, because he has a way of getting out of it.
Yes.
He's slightly more intelligent than we give him, in terms of blaming it on somebody else and running away to safer grounds. But once I've said that, is that he does not lack advisors. Why? He has enough people, the way Dr. Martin Olo has said. But my worry is whether he has room for advice. Number two, whether he allows his advisors the latitude of freedom to make decisions. Students of management and governance are reminded quite often that when you go to a meeting, you can introduce the topic, but do not allow yourself to be read into if you are the main person in charge of that organization. Because people all over the world, Africa in particular, do not like going against the grain. They would want to massage the ego of the boss. And therefore, if you give them position that this is my position, they will try to work around it and make it look nice. But at the end of the day, they have not given you an answer. They will not have given you an answer. And therefore, the best thing is to do what President Reagan said. Give assignment to people who are well trained and give them the latitude of freedom to make decisions based on the information available to them, and they will give you the best answers.
Thank you.
What advice can I give to this government? If you have advisors, allow them to give you advice before you preempt them by your own prejudices. Don't allow your lenses to influence the clarity of the issues presented to you.
Thank you. All right, we need to wind up the show on that particular note. I'll just not give you also your headline thoughts. I'm sorry. We can actually pick up on these issues next week. So thank you very much for your valued company. You've been watching Uongozi Today. We'll pick up on these issues and, of course, following all the latest development as far as